that was a segue. Now, we just, since the scriptures were way back there, we need to do a little review, just a little book report on Mary and Joseph and Gabriel and all that. So you've heard these stories. Many of you have heard these stories your whole life. Some of you, even if you didn't listen just now, you still caught something, even if you weren't actively listening. But we're going to go over Mary and Joseph just so we're all on the same page. So Mary, just a random teenage girl. There is nothing special about her, according to the world's standards, at this point in her life. She hasn't shown any promise. She's not the star of her basketball team. She's not the star of her debate team. She's not prettier than anyone else. She's just Mary. And her town, nothing special about her town. It barely fits on a map. It's just a little dot out there. I think of it kind of like, I don't know, like Delta. You know, you drive through Delta, like, it's pretty enough, but there's nothing special about Delta. Blip on the map. Her country at this time is sort of kind of oppressed. It's being occupied by a militarized force, a militarized police force that their whole job seems to be just to pick on people like her. There's no point to them being there in the way they're there other than to just show that they are in charge. And people harassed her. And her mom named her. Now, okay, Mary, what does your name mean? Trouble. Rebellious one. Something like, there's another, in Hebrew, that's what the word Mary or Miriam means, is rebellious one. I talked to my wife, she's teaching a little Sunday school class today about Mary, and I was like, here, throw this in there. So she's bringing that to her church. But Mary, she named her child Rebel. If you go back about 200 years before Jesus, like almost no one would name their child Mary at that point. But then when you come around, when Rome starts to come in and control Israel, all the girls are named Mary. I mean, if you're in the Bible and you look up a woman's name in the New Testament, what's it going to be? It's Mary. Mary this, Mary that. So it's a common name for a reason. She is named Rebel for a reason. Just a good guess, but she probably grew up in a home, Mary grew up in a home where her parents talked about things like rights and equality and rebellious things like that. So soon after this encounter with Gabriel, Mary, the story we didn't read here, she sings a song to her baby that's still in her belly. I'm sure moms, dads, you've all done this. You've sung a song to your kiddo. There's plenty of research. This is a great thing to do. Did Mary learn it from her mother? I don't know. Did she make it up herself? Maybe. We don't know. But she sings this song about her boy is going to change the world. Her boy is going to show people how to care for each other with dignity. Her boy is going to show the world how to rip the powerful off of their thrones and send the rich away hungry and fill the bellies of the lonely and those who are starving. It's fair to say she grew up and she's still in this place where she has a justice-oriented religious background. So Jesus grew up with mom and grandparents who had no patience in Rome being Rome. They had no patience in Israel participating in their own oppression. No patience in making Rome great again. Make it holy again? Yes. Kind, faithful, just, caring? Sure. But this family knew what kind of God they trusted, and they knew what kind of people they did not trust. Now, when Gabriel invited her to have a baby, it's just completely off the rails. It's a ridiculous request for a young girl. And she was, the phrase up there was confused and disturbed. We rushed too much to her just being like silent and helpful. She was freaked out by this whole scenario. But eventually she accepts this unique calling, not only as a mother, but to raise this boy in the good news of God's kingdom of peace. And she not only accepts to be a mom, she accepts to be, it's hard enough being a teenager. Would anyone, is there an amount of money that I could pay you to just like go back and be a teenager? Yeah, we've got one teenager back there who says yes. It is hard. It's harder to be a teenage girl. It's harder to be an oppressed teenage girl in this society than what most of us kind of feel right now. Harder to be a teenage mom. But Mary takes the high road, and she chooses not only to be a mother, but to accept all of the judgment and the shame thrown at her. And she's not going to hold on to it. She's going to let it slip right off because she's committed to raising this boy to make a better world. Now, you hear a lot about Mary, so what about Joseph? unskilled laborer. You know what that means is those guys can do anything with their hands. The guys like my dad, this is what he did. If he wasn't a bouncer, which most of the time, he cooked catfish and he tore houses down and he built decks and he cut firewood and he sold worms. So he was an unskilled laborer, which meant he could fix anything. Think of Joseph like that. That guy down the street who you can bring him your radio, you can pull a tooth, whatever you need. So he can do anything. And at the same time, he comes from the house of David. What that means is he comes from an esteemed, long-standing family line. Do you see the incongruency there? He's part of a family that expects much. And whether he's a disappointment to them or himself, or whether he's just chosen to have his own path exactly like this with all the freedom that he deserves, either way, it hasn't gone the way people expected of him. He hasn't lived up to the standards that others had for him. It's really hard being a guy in your 20s, just a young man in a world where the only thing you know how to do is survive. But that's what he knows how to do. And he's going to point that to his family. When Joseph hears what's going on, and don't over-sanctify this, he has to think about it. Joseph is not immediately all in. In Matthew, the other gospel that talks about this story, it actually says that he first chooses to break up with Mary. That's his first choice, break off the engagement. He said, well, I'll do it quietly so she won't be hurt. Now, what does that mean? He could have said, I have been offended by this, and Mary, your parents owe me something for my being stuck in this messy situation. I'm going to get judged for this. So he says, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'll just divorce her before it's really a divorce. I'll just break up with her. And then he says, no, actually, I don't need to be afraid of this. And which is when the angel says, do not be afraid. Maybe he realizes his love overwhelms his fear. Maybe he realizes this is his best opportunity to marry an awesome woman, whether she has baggage or not. But one thing to notice in this story of Joseph, when he changes his mind and says, I'm going to go with this. We're going to do this together. There's nothing about Joseph in this story, that story, any other story, where there's any hint of toxic masculinity. This is a 20-something-year-old dude who works construction. His buddies, no doubt, gave him plenty of advice on what to do with that woman. Plenty. But call it valor or faith or love or hope or whatever, Joseph was just raised to be a decent guy. So he is. Priest? He wasn't raised to be a priest. No. Doctor, lawyer? Not that guy. But a good guy, righteous and caring and protective, caring to women and his unborn child, yeah, that's where real masculinity comes from. So his dad took on his calling to raise Jesus as a sensitive and respectful young man. Mom took on her calling to raise the boy with awareness of injustice and compassion. And for all the peace and frosty snowmen and lights and carol of the bells and all the hope and the joy, all those things that we put on Christmas, that is the cradle context of Christmas. This is when the parents sat around and said, how are we going to do this? That's what they talked about, how to raise this boy in that kind of a way. These are down-home people, strengths and weaknesses, fear and hope. No first-time parent is ever prepared, amen? Yeah, ever. But they have such resiliency. They have such sweetness and hope. They are going to make it work. They're going to do better than they ever expected. They have to do better than they've ever expected. So that's how God comes into the world in this story. God chooses a simple neighborhood, vulnerable parents in a political crisis with a birth and childhood that is at risk in so many ways. There is zero chance that Mary or Joseph would ever make 5 minutes of news in their towns, much less have their names thrust into the whole world, unless they choose to accept this ridiculous calling to raise Jesus together, which they do. And God works through them. God works through their personalities and through their weaknesses. God will work through their fear when they soon become refugees. God will work through their faith as they become religious pilgrims to Jerusalem. God will work through their grief when Joseph, this is just my best guess, but Joseph disappears at some point, and Jesus really cares about people with leprosy. So it's very possible that Joseph died of leprosy, of a health disease, while Jesus was a teenager, and that helped him found his compassion on folks like that. And God worked through that grief grief and through the joy of having that close family with all the brothers and sisters. The brothers got names up there, and they know all the sisters too. Mary and Joseph were called to a ridiculous calling that none of you, thank God, are called to do. None of you are Joseph 2.0. None of you are expected to have the faith of Mary. You are called to have justice and peace and sensitivity and humility, whether an angel tells you or not. You're called to be a person among people. And as we work our way toward this first Christmas that happened in this context, you're called to make a difference however you can make a difference. Whatever your parents gave you, whatever they named you for a reason, that's your holy invitation. This is your holy invitation to face the fear and cultivate trust and metabolize grief and build beauty into the world. That's your Christmas calling, whether it means coming to a head with some big major issue that just keeps pounding up at your life, or whether it means just practicing a little bit of patience for someone in your life. You can just try a little bit harder to give grace for that and forgiveness for that, so that you might know that you have the power to bring a little nightlight into a world of shadows. Maybe you're called to change your life with some sacrifice or transformation, or maybe you're called to be a witness to the pain of a neighbor. Maybe the world is calling on you to have some courage in the place that is most difficult, or maybe it just says, show up and be you. Just be you without anger or anxiety, which sounds about the hardest calling I can imagine. I don't know what the angel will ask of you. You might know exactly what that is in your heart already, but I invite you to keep yourself open and gracious. God will send you something meaningful. May it be so.